The skies of Valora Prime burned with colors that should never exist in nature. Brilliant greens and violent purples mixing with the orange glow of atmospheric fires that consumed the capital city below. The Carthene dreadnoughts hung in orbit like metallic predators, their hulls darker than the void of space itself, bristling with weapon systems that had reduced proud civilizations to ash and memory across 40 star systems. On the planet's surface, millions ran through streets that crumbled under orbital bombardment, their screams lost in the thunder of destruction that rained from above. Buildings that had stood for thousands of years collapsed in seconds, crushed under the weight of kinetic strikes that hit with the force of small nuclear weapons. In the government center, what remained of it? Governor Thelanara watched her world die through screens that flickered and sparked with each nearby impact. Her forearms trembled as she gripped the console, her compound eyes reflecting the horror unfolding across every district of her city. Evacuation ships are at 60% capacity, her aide reported, his voice cracking with barely contained panic. The Carthen are targeting the launch pads. We're losing vessels before they can break atmosphere. Thelanara's throat sac inflated with a sound like breaking glass, the Velaran expression of deepest grief. Tell the ships to scatter random vectors. Anything to get our people away from here? Another impact shook the building. Closer this time, dust rained from the ceiling and several monitors went dark. Through the windows she could see the massive shadow of a Carthene cruiser passing overhead, its underbelly glowing with charged weapons preparing to fire again. This was how the Carthene Dominion operated. They would send a simple message to any civilization they encountered, demanding tribute, resources, and total submission. Those who complied became vassal states, stripped of dignity and slowly drained of everything that made them prosperous. Those who refused, like Valora Prime, faced annihilation. For 200 years, this pattern had repeated across the Outer Rim. The Carthene military machine was vast and terrifying, their technology superior to almost everything the galaxy could field against them. They had perfected the art of overwhelming force, crushing resistance before it could organize. Thelanara had known the risks when her government voted to reject the Carthen demands. Valora Prime was a trading world, prosperous and peaceful, built on commerce and culture rather than military might. They had few weapons and even fewer warships, but they also had pride. And the memory of what happened to worlds that accepted Carthene rule, those worlds still existed technically, but their people lived as slaves in all but name, working in mines and factories to fuel the endless Carthen expansion, watching their children conscripted into service crews, their resources shipped away while they starved. The choice had been between a quick death and a slow one. Valora had chosen to die standing governor. "We're being hailed," the communications officer said, her voice tight with fear. On screen, the image that appeared was burned into the nightmares of 100 worlds. Commander Jareth of the Carthen Fourth Fleet. His species was bipedal like so many others, but there the similarity ended. Armored scales covered his body in overlapping plates of deep crimson. His eyes were vertical slits of pure black, and when he spoke, rows of crystalline teeth glinted in the light of burning cities. Governor Thelanara Jareth said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the speakers, "Your resistance ends now. Order your remaining ships to stand down, and I will allow some of your population to survive as laborers. Continue this futile defiance, and I will reduce every structure on your world to rubble." Thelanara straightened her posture, all four arms rigid at her sides. "We will never serve the Dominion. Our answer remains no." Jareth's expression didn't change. He had heard this before countless times. "Then you have chosen extinction. Your species will be remembered only as a cautionary tale." The screen went dark. 30 seconds later, the bombardment intensified to levels that seemed impossible. The entire government complex shook like a leaf in a storm. Thelanara was thrown to the floor as support beams gave way above. Her aide dragged her toward the emergency shelter as the building began to collapse around them. They made it to the reinforced bunker 3 levels down, joining 24 other survivors who stared at monitors showing the systematic destruction of everything they had ever known. The Carthene were thorough. They always were. Cities, spaceports, industrial centers, even agricultural regions, all targeted with calculated precision. Hours passed in that bunker. The bombardment never stopping, never slowing. Someone began to weep, then another, until the sound filled the small space like a dirge. Thelanara sat apart from the others, her mind racing through options that all led to the same conclusion. Valora Prime was lost. The Carthan would kill everyone here and move on to the next target. Probably the industrial worlds of the Kishara Union or the mining colonies of the Drenth Combine. The Galactic Coalition, that loose alliance of survivors and refugees that had formed in the wake of Carthene expansion, had tried to fight back. They had assembled fleets, coordinated defenses, even attempted a major offensive 2 years ago. The Carthene had destroyed them utterly. Their technology was simply too advanced, their numbers too great. Coalition ships burned like candles against the night of Carthenese supremacy. But there was one thing, one desperate hope that Thelanara had held in reserve. She pulled up a secure terminal and began encoding a message. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic interface, inputting coordinates that had been passed through back channels and whispered rumors. Humanity, 2 decades ago, when the Carthene first began their expansion into the Outer Rim. They had encountered a species that called themselves humans. The details were scarce, but the story went that the Carthan had sent their usual demands to a human colony world. The humans had responded by destroying 3 Carthene warships. Then they had vanished, pulling back behind their borders, sealing themselves off from the rest of the galaxy. No trade, no communication, nothing. The Carthene had tried to pursue to punish this defiance. But every scout ship sent into human space simply disappeared. Eventually, the Carthene had decided to focus on easier targets. Planning to return to the human problem once the rest of the Rim was pacified, most species thought humanity was a myth, or had destroyed themselves in isolation. But Thelanara had met a traitor once. A Kishari merchant who swore he had done business with humans before the withdrawal. He spoke of their technology with awe, their weapons with fear, and their determination with respect. He had also given her coordinates, the last known location of human monitoring stations on the edge of their territory. Thelanara finished encoding the message, a simple distress call that included data on Carthene fleet movements, their technology, and the systematic destruction of coalition worlds. She sent it to the coordinates with maximum power, praying it would reach someone. Anyone who might help? She knew it was hopeless. Even if humans still existed, why would they care about aliens dying light years away? They had chosen isolation for a reason, probably to avoid exactly this kind of entanglement. But hope, even futile hope, was all she had left. The message transmitted, disappearing into the vast darkness of space. Above, the bombardment continued. Valora Prime died slowly, its atmosphere choked with ash, its oceans boiling under sustained fire. The Carthane were making an example, as they always did. Thelanara closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to gods she wasn't sure existed anymore, asking not for salvation, but for someone, somewhere, to remember that her people had lived, had built beauty and culture, had mattered. The bunker shook again, harder this time, and the message traveled on, racing through the void at the speed of light, carrying the last desperate hope of a dying world toward a species that might not even exist anymore, toward humanity, toward silence, or toward something the Carthene Dominion could never anticipate, a reckoning that would shake the foundations of their empire, and teach them that the galaxy was far larger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. But that would come later. For now, Valora Prime burned, and Thelanara waited in the dark, hoping against hope that her message would find its mark. The Terran Defense Force monitoring station Sentinel-7 floated in the dark between stars, a silent watchman on the edge of human space. Lieutenant Sarah Chen sat at her sensor console during the graveyard shift, watching the endless stream of data that flowed across her screens. Most nights, nothing happened. Space was vast and empty, and humanity had made itself very small and very quiet over the past 2 decades. That was the official policy after the disaster of first contact. Isolation until humanity was ready, whatever that meant. Sarah took a sip of coffee that had gone cold hours ago and grimaced. She was about to get up for a fresh cup when her console lit up with an alert she had never seen before in 3 years of duty. Unknown signal, unencrypted, high-power transmission from beyond the quarantine line. Her hand froze halfway to the communication button. Signals from outside human space were supposed to be impossible. Every species they had encountered had been warned in the clearest possible terms to stay away. Most had complied out of fear after what happened to the Carthene scouts. But this was definitely a signal, and it was definitely alien. "Officer on deck," she called out, her voice cracking slightly. Commander Rodriguez appeared from the break room. "Still holding his own coffee? What is it, Chen, sir?" "We're receiving an alien transmission, high power." Directed at these coordinates, Rodriguez set his coffee down very carefully. "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. The computer has already verified it's not a glitch or echo. Someone out there is trying to reach us. Put it through linguistic analysis and decryption. I need to inform Earth immediately." Rodriguez was already moving to the secure communication terminal. His casual demeanor replaced by sharp military precision. Sarah routed the signal through the station's translation, AI. A sophisticated system that had been built from the fragments of first contact. The program began working. Comparing the alien signal against known language patterns, mathematical constants, anything that might provide a key to understanding, it took 6 hours. But eventually the AI produced a working translation. What emerged was not what anyone expected. A distress call, detailed, desperate, and accompanied by extensive data about something called the Carthene Dominion. Sarah read the translation 3 times, her stomach sinking with each pass. The message described a civilization that had conquered 40 star systems, destroyed countless others, and was expanding toward human space, whether humanity knew it or not. The sender, someone named Thelanara, begged for help, for intervention, for anything humanity could provide to stop the genocide of species after species. "Sir," Sarah said quietly, "you need to read this." Rodriguez did, his face growing darker with each paragraph. When he finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Get me Admiral Kurse at Fleet Command, maximum encryption." This goes straight to the top. The message hit Earth like a bomb for 2 weeks. Classified meetings filled the halls of the Terran Defense Force headquarters in Geneva. Admirals, generals, civilian leaders, all gathered to debate what this message meant and how humanity should respond. Some argued for continued isolation. They pointed out that humanity had barely survived first contact with just a handful of Carthenine scouts. Getting involved in an interstellar war was suicide. Others argued that the Carthen were already a threat if they had conquered 40 systems. How long before they decided to finish what they started with humanity? Better to act now while there were still potential allies. The debates raged, voices raised, fists pounded on tables in the end. It was Admiral Victoria Kurse who proposed the compromise that everyone could accept. They would send one ship, a single battleship, to investigate and assess the situation. Not a fleet that could be seen as an invasion force, but not nothing either. If the situation was as bad as the message suggested, the ship could provide assistance and gather intelligence. If it was a trap or exaggeration, one ship could withdraw without committing humanity to a war it couldn't win. The question then became, which ship and who would command it? The answer was obvious to everyone who had studied the personnel files: Captain Elena Vasquez. She was summoned to Geneva from her patrol route along the outer colonies, told only that her presence was required for a classified briefing of the highest importance. Vasquez arrived at Fleet Command headquarters wondering if she was being court-martialed. She had a reputation for unconventional tactics and ignoring orders she thought were stupid. It had won her victories but not friends among the more traditional officers. Instead, she was shown into a conference room where Admiral Kurse waited with a dozen senior staff members. "Captain Vasquez," Kurse began without preamble. "How much do you know about first contact?" Vasquez blinked at the unexpected question. "The official story, ma'am. Carthene scouts encountered our colony at New Avalon, demanded surrender. We destroyed 3 of their ships and they withdrew. We've maintained radio silence ever since. That's the sanitized version," Kurse said. "The truth is messier. We lost 2 ships and barely drove them off. Our technology worked, but only because we caught them by surprise, if they had come in force. New Avalon would have been ashes. She activated a holographic display showing the alien message from Thelanara. 6 months ago we received this. It's taken this long to verify its authenticity and decide how to respond. Vasquez read the message, her expression hardening. They've conquered 40 systems that we know of. The data includes fleet compositions, technology assessments, tactical analysis of their methods. The Carthene Dominion is everything we feared might be out there. And they're expanding in our direction, so we're going to war, Vasquez said flatly. Not exactly, Kirsch replied. We're sending one ship, yours, if you accept. The mission is to investigate, assess the threat, and provide assistance to coalition forces if feasible. You'll have complete tactical autonomy. This will be a long-range independent operation with no support. Vasquez looked at the data again. Seeing the casualty reports, the destroyed worlds, the systematic brutality of the Carthan conquest. One ship against an empire, one ship to start, Curse corrected. If you determine the threat is real and immediate, you'll send back intelligence and we'll mobilize, but we need eyes on the situation first. Someone who can think independently and adapt to changing circumstances. Why me? Because you're the best combat captain we have. And because you don't follow stupid orders? Kirsch smiled slightly. This mission requires someone who can make hard decisions 200 light years from any oversight. You've proven you can do that. Vasquez was silent for a moment, thinking about what was being asked of her. One ship, her ship, the Indomitable. Sent into unknown space to face an enemy that had crushed dozens of civilizations. It was insane. It was probably a suicide mission. She would absolutely do it. What are my rules of engagement? She asked. Defend yourself and coalition forces as you see fit. Gather intelligence. Avoid unnecessary escalation, but don't back down from a fight if one comes to you. And most importantly, come back alive with information we can use. When do I leave? 2 weeks. That gives you time to brief your crew and make any personnel changes you think necessary. Nobody goes on this mission who doesn't volunteer. Vasquez returned to her ship with a datapad full of classified files and a head full of questions. The Indomitable was a Titan-class battleship, one of only 5 in the fleet, 1,500 feet long, bristling with railguns, missile batteries, point defense systems, and the most advanced reactor humanity had ever built. It was also home to 320 crew members who deserved to know what they were being asked to do. She assembled them in the main hangar bay, standing on a cargo container so everyone could see her. I'm going to be straight with you, she began. We've been given a mission that will take us further from Earth than any human ship has gone. Into a region of space where an alien empire has been conquering and destroying civilizations for 2 centuries. We're going alone, no backup, no support. And there's a very real chance we won't come back. The silence was absolute. 300 faces stared at her, processing what they had just heard. This is a volunteer mission only. Anyone who wants to transfer off this ship. No questions asked. No mark on your record. Speak to your department head within 24 hours. For those who stay, understand what you're signing up for. We're going to war, and we're going alone. She stepped down from the container and walked to her quarters. Wondering how many would leave 24 hours later? Chief Engineer Marcus Chen appeared at her door with the transfer requests. There were 3 out of 320. Vasquez felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. Get me volunteers to replace them. People who understand what we're doing, already done. Ma'am, we have applicants from 6 other ships. All volunteers, all good people. She looked at Chen. Her chief engineer for 5 years, a man who could keep the reactors running through anything. You're sure about this, Marcus, Captain? I've been maintaining this ship for years, waiting for a chance to see what it can really do. Looks like I'm about to find out, he grinned, but there was steel behind it. The Indomitable spent the next 2 weeks in preparation. Weapon systems tested and retested, supplies loaded for a year-long deployment. Every system checked and double-checked. The transition from faster-than-light, travel back to normal space was always jarring. Reality snapping back into place with a sensation that felt like falling even though there was no up or down. The Indomitable emerged at the edge of the Valora system, and immediately every sensor on the ship began screaming warnings. "Multiple contacts," Tanaka reported from Tactical. His voice tight. "I'm reading Carthine's signatures. 3 cruisers in patrol formation. 2 more near the 4th planet, and debris." "Lots of debris." Vasquez leaned forward in her command chair, studying the holographic display that materialized above the main console. What she saw made her jaw clench. Valora Prime was a graveyard. Orbital stations that had once housed thousands were now twisted metal frameworks, atmosphere leaking from ruptured hulls. The planet itself was obscured by a cloud layer that looked wrong, too dark, too uniform. The atmospheric composition readings showed massive particulate contamination. "They had burned the whole world, Captain. We're being hailed," Communications Officer Riley announced. "Carthan cruisers are demanding we identify ourselves and state our business." On screen, the image that appeared was similar to the one from Thelanara's files. A Carthene officer with crimson scales and predatory eyes, though this one wore different rank insignia. "Unknown vessel," the Carthene said, in a language the translator struggled with before finding patterns. "You have entered Dominion-controlled space. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed." Vasquez stood, smoothing her uniform. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran battleship Indomitable. We received a distress call from this system and have come to investigate." The Carthene's eyes narrowed. "Terran, we have no record of this species." "It does not matter. This system belongs to the Dominion. Leave immediately or you will be treated as hostile." "We're not leaving until we've assessed the situation and located any survivors," Vasquez said calmly. "Stand down your weapons and we can discuss this peacefully." The Carthene officer made a sound like grinding rocks, which the translator indicated was laughter. "One ship, one small ship, and you think to give orders to the Dominion. Your arrogance will be your end." The transmission cut off, "Ma'am. All 3 cruisers are breaking formation and moving to intercept," Tanaka reported. "Weapons charging, they're not playing around." Vasquez sat back in her command chair, her mind racing through tactical options. 3 cruisers, each one probably outmassing the Indomitable by a factor of 2 or 3. Standard doctrine would say run, but they had come here to fight. "Battle stations," she ordered, and alarms began wailing throughout the ship. "Chen, I need the reactor at 100%. Tanaka, target the lead cruiser. Focus fire on what looks like their shield generators, Riley. Broadcast on all frequencies that we are defending ourselves from unprovoked attack, ma'am." "Shouldn't we try to negotiate further?" Riley asked. "They made their choice," Vasquez replied. "Now we make ours. All hands. This is the captain. We're about to show the Carthene why humanity doesn't back down. Give them hell." The 3 Carthene cruisers came in fast, their formations tight and professional. Centuries of conquest had made them confident, arrogant even. They had crushed hundreds of ships, exactly like this, but they had never fought a human ship. The first indication that this battle would be different came when the Carthan fired their opening salvo. Missiles streaked toward the Indomitable, dozens of them, guided by sophisticated targeting systems. The Indomitable's point defense network came alive. Automated railguns tracked and fired thousands of rounds per minute, creating a wall of tungsten projectiles between the ship and incoming threats. The missiles began detonating in brilliant flashes, dozens becoming tens, tens becoming ones, and finally none reaching their target on the lead Carthene cruiser. The weapons officer stared at his screens in confusion. "Commander, they intercepted everything." "Fire again." Double the salvo, more missiles launched, streaking across the void. "More missiles died in brilliant flowers of light before reaching their target, sir. Their point defense efficiency is beyond anything in our database." Then close to beam range and tear them apart. But the Indomitable wasn't waiting. "Fire," Vasquez ordered. The battleship's main railgun battery spoke. Magnetic acceleration launched tungsten-jacketed, depleted uranium rounds at a significant percentage of light speed. The kinetic energy involved was devastating, and the targeting was precise. The lead Carthan cruiser's shields flared and died under the impact of rounds that hit like the fist of an angry god. Hull plating crumpled, atmosphere vented, and internal explosions rippled through the ship as the rounds punched through multiple decks. "Direct hit," Tanaka reported. "Their shields are down and they've lost main power." "I'm reading multiple hull breaches." The other two Carthene cruisers began evasive maneuvers. Suddenly less confident, "Target the second cruiser," Vasquez ordered. "Chen, give me everything the reactor can handle." "I want to end this fast," the Indomitable accelerated, its advanced fusion drive pushing it to speeds the Carthene couldn't match. The battleship moved like a fighter, rolling and weaving through space while maintaining devastating fire. The second Carthene cruiser tried to bring its main guns to bear. Huge energy weapons that could slice through conventional armor. It managed to fire once. A brilliant green beam that struck the Indomitable's forward shields. Alarms blared as the shield generators strained under the load, but they held barely. "Shields at 60%, Tanaka reported. "Return fire." All batteries. The Indomitable's response was immediate and overwhelming. Railgun rounds hammered the Carthene cruiser, while missile launchers added their own contribution. Conti-Onel, explosives, mixed with nuclear-tipped penetrators. The Carthene cruiser came apart like a toy. Its reactor containment failed, and the ship vanished in a brief new star. The third cruiser was already running, its commander having seen enough, "Sir." "The third cruiser is fleeing," Tanaka said. "Should I pursue?" Vasquez watched the fleeing ship on her displays. It was broadcasting frantically, probably warning the rest of the Carthene fleet about the human ship. "Let them warn. Let them fear. Let it go," she ordered. "I want survivors to tell the story. Focus on damage control and scan for any coalition presence." The battle had lasted 8 minutes. Riley's hands were shaking as she ran through communication frequencies. "Captain, I'm picking up encrypted signals from the asteroid belt. Someone's trying to hail us? Put them through." The image that appeared was not Carthene. It was a four-armed alien with compound eyes, wearing a tattered uniform behind her. Vasquez could see what looked like a makeshift command center carved into an asteroid. "Human ship," the alien said, her voice trembling. "I am Governor Thelanara of Valora Prime. Or what remains of it, are you?" "Did you really come? Because of my message?" Vasquez felt something twist in her chest. "We received your distress call, Governor. I'm Captain Elena Vasquez. We're here to help." Thelanara's compound eyes glistened with what might have been tears. "You destroyed 3 Carthene cruisers in minutes. I have never seen anything like it. How many survivors do you have in the asteroid belt?" "Maybe 10,000. On the surface," Thelanara's voice broke. "Millions died in the bombardment. The Carthene have been using our world as a staging area. They patrol the system to prevent anyone from escaping." "Not anymore," Vasquez said grimly. "We're here now, and we're going to make sure the Carthene regret what they did here. Can you organize your forces? Any ships you have left? We have a few fighters, some civilian vessels. Nothing that could stand against Carthene military ships." "You don't need to stand against them alone anymore," Vasquez replied. "I need to speak with coalition leadership. All of them. Can you arrange a meeting, yes?" "Yes, of course, Captain. I must ask. Are there more human ships coming?" Vasquez hesitated, then decided on honesty. "For now it's just us, but we're here, and we're not leaving until this is finished over the next few hours." Coalition vessels began emerging from hiding, battered fighters, damaged freighters. Ships that had been running and hiding for so long they could barely believe the Carthene were gone. The Indomitable maintained position near the asteroid belt, while Vasquez met with coalition leaders via holographic link. There were dozens of species represented, all of them bearing the scars of Carthene aggression. A Kashari admiral with cybernetic replacements for limbs lost in battle. A Drenth commander whose carapace showed laser scoring. A Velern merchant captain who had lost 3 ships to Carthene raiders. They all stared at Vasquez with the same expression, desperate hope mixed with disbelief. "You destroyed 3 cruisers," the Kashari admiral said. "We have lost entire fleets to smaller Carthene forces." "How is this possible? Human technology is different," Vasquez explained. "Our weapons, our defenses, our tactics. We've been preparing for this kind of fight since our first contact with the Carthene," They caught us by surprise once. We made sure it would never happen again. Can you teach us? The Drenth commander asked. Can you share this technology? I can share tactics, Vasquez said carefully. I can show you how to fight smarter, how to use what you have more effectively. As for technology, that's a decision above my pay grade. But I promise you this, while I'm here. The Carthene are going to learn what it means to face united opposition. News of the battle at Valora Prime spread through both the Coalition and the Carthene Dominion like wildfire, though each side interpreted it very differently. For the Coalition, it was the first real victory in 2 years. 3 Carthene cruisers destroyed by a single unknown vessel. For species that had known only defeat and retreat, it was like watching the sun rise after an endless night. For the Carthene, it was confusion and anger. In the command ship of the 4th Fleet, Fleet Commander Jareth studied the tactical recordings, transmitted by the fleeing cruiser before it had been court-martialed for cowardice. He watched the human ship dance through space, its weapons tearing apart vessels that should have crushed it. Unknown technology, his tactical officer reported. Their point defense is beyond anything we've encountered. Their kinetic weapons hit with force comparable to our own main batteries, and their acceleration profiles suggest power generation far exceeding their mass. Jareth's claws scraped against the metal of his command throne. One ship should not be capable of this, Commander. The High Council is demanding an explanation. They want to know how 3 cruisers were destroyed by a single vessel of unknown origin. Tell the High Council that I will personally destroy this human ship, Jareth growled, and I will do it in a way that shows the galaxy what happens to those who oppose the Dominion. But he was lying to himself and he knew it. That recording troubled him deeply. The Carthene had conquered 40 star systems through overwhelming force and superior technology. They had never encountered resistance that could match them weapon for weapon. Until now, meanwhile, aboard the Indomitable, Vasquez was running training sessions with Coalition forces. The main hangar had been converted into a classroom, with holographic displays showing tactical scenarios. Pilots from a dozen species sat in makeshift seating, watching as Vasquez walked them through the basics of coordinated combat. Your problem isn't courage, she explained, pointing to a simulation of a previous Coalition engagement. You fought bravely here, but you fought as individuals. Each ship trying to survive rather than working as a unit. A Kashari pilot raised one of his forearms. When Carthene cruisers lock weapons on you, survival becomes the only priority. I understand that instinct, Vasquez said. But that's exactly what the Carthene count on. They want you scattered, panicked, easy to pick off one by one instead. You need to think like a pack predator, not one ship trying to survive. But 5 ships working together to kill? She changed the simulation, showing a different scenario. Look at this. 3 fighters coordinate their approach. They come in from different vectors, forcing the Carthene to split their fire while the cruiser is tracking them. A 4th fighter hits it from the blind spot, not with enough firepower to destroy it, but enough to damage shields and sensors. The simulation showed the Carthene cruiser's defenses weakening. Now the cruiser is vulnerable, and your heavy ships can move in for the kill. You trade the Carthene's advantage in firepower for your advantage in numbers and maneuverability. But what if they have multiple cruisers? Another pilot asked. Then you choose your target carefully. You don't try to fight them all at once. You isolate one, overwhelm it quickly, and then move to the next. The Carthene expects you to run or die. They don't expect you to hunt them over the following weeks. The Coalition forces drilled relentlessly. Vasquez pushed them hard, running simulation after simulation until the tactics became instinct. And slowly, something changed. The first real test came at a mining colony called Perth Station. The Carthene had occupied it for months, using the miners as forced labor to extract rare metals for their war machine. Intelligence from Coalition scouts indicated a single Carthene destroyer on station. With 2 more cruisers within a day's travel, it was a perfect target. Vasquez assembled a strike force, 5 Coalition fighters, 2 light frigates, and the Indomitable. Remember your training, she told them over the tactical channel. We hit them fast, we hit them hard. And we work together, the fighters go in first. Draw their fire and tag their sensor arrays. The frigates follow up and hit their engines. The Indomitable will handle the heavy lifting. The attack went exactly as planned. Coalition fighters screamed in from 3 vectors, their weapons lighting up the Carthene destroyer's shields. The Carthene responded predictably, focusing fire on the small, fast targets. But these pilots had been trained. They didn't panic, didn't scatter. They maintained formation, weaving through incoming fire while their weapons chipped away at specific points on the enemy shields. The frigates came in low and fast, their guns targeting the destroyer's engine section. Explosions rippled across the Carthene hull as propulsion systems took damage. And then the Indomitable arrived. Vasquez had positioned her ship perfectly, coming in from above, while the Carthene were focused on threats from the horizontal plane.
Ow!
The battleship's railguns spoke once. A devastating broadside that caught the destroyer with its shields weakened and its attention divided. The Carthene ship didn't explode. Instead, it simply stopped. Power failing, atmosphere venting, a dead hulk tumbling through space. Target neutralized, Tanaka reported. Coalition forces, report status, fighter wing intact. Minor damage only, came the reply. Frigates reporting minor hull damage. Nothing critical. Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. Well done, everyone. Now let's free those miners before reinforcements arrive. The liberation of Perth Station took 3 hours. The Carthene garrison on the surface was minimal. Mostly administrative personnel, who surrendered quickly when faced with armed resistance. The miners, nearly 10,000 beings from 6 different species, were brought up to coalition ships. Many were in poor health, suffering from malnutrition and overwork, but they were free, and more importantly, word spread. Perth Station was the first, but it wouldn't be the last. Over the next 2 months, the pattern repeated. Small Carthene outposts, isolated patrol ships, resource extraction sites, all targeted and liberated with increasing efficiency. The coalition forces grew bolder, more confident. They began to believe that victory was possible. The Carthene, meanwhile, were becoming frustrated and angry. Jareth watched the reports pile up, each one describing another loss, another embarrassment. The human ship and its coalition allies were making the Dominion look weak. That was intolerable enough, he declared during a command meeting. We will end this now, said a trap. His tactical officer nodded. What bait do you suggest, Commander? Perth Station was a mining colony, Jareth mused. They seemed to favor liberating civilians, very noble, very predictable. There is a research facility at Kepler Station, small, lightly defended. It holds civilian scientists and their families. You want to use them as bait. Want to use them to lure the human ship into a killing box, Jareth corrected. Leak information about Kepler Station through our usual channels. Make it seem like an easy target when they arrive. We'll be waiting with 15 warships, sir. That's nearly a quarter of our available forces in this sector. And it will be enough to crush this human and end their interference once and for all. Jareth's eyes gleamed. I will personally oversee this operation. The human captain has shown skill. But skill means nothing against overwhelming force. The trap was set carefully. Coalition intelligence picked up rumors about Kepler Station, a small research facility supposedly guarded by only a light corvette. Civilian scientists were being forced to work on Carthene weapons development, including their children who were held as hostages. It was exactly the kind of target Vasquez had been hitting. It feels wrong, Tanaka said. Studying the intelligence reports, too perfect? Like it's designed to appeal to us, Vasquez nodded slowly. I agree. This could absolutely be a trap, so we don't go. I didn't say that, Vasquez replied. I said it could be a trap, but those are real civilians if the intelligence is accurate. And if the Carthene are setting a trap, that means we've hurt them badly enough that they're getting desperate. Or it means they have enough force assembled there to crush us. Probably that too, Vasquez admitted. But here's the thing. If we don't go, the coalition loses faith. They need to see that we don't abandon people, even when it's dangerous. And if it is a trap, well, we've known from the beginning that we'd face overwhelming odds eventually. She pulled up tactical displays of Kepler Station and the surrounding space. We go in smart, we don't rush. We scout properly, and we have exit strategies. But we go. The Indomitable and its coalition escort jumped to Kepler Station 3 days later. What they found was exactly what Vasquez had feared. Multiple contacts, Tanaka reported. His voice tight. I count 15 Carthene warships, including what looks like a fleet command ship. They're in a formation that blocks all the easy escape vectors. It's definitely a trap, Chen commented from engineering. And we just flew right into it. Coalition forces. Fall back to secondary positions, Vasquez ordered. Stay out of the initial engagement. I need room to maneuver, Captain. There are too many, Riley said, even with our advantages. 15-1 odds, I know, Vasquez replied calmly, which is W. The news of Jareth's defeat and surrender spread across the Carthene Dominion like a poison for 2 centuries. The Dominion had been built on a single principle. Carthene's supremacy was absolute and inevitable. Every species they encountered either submitted or died. There was no third option, until now, in the throne world of Carthilla. The High Council convened an emergency session. 12 of the most powerful Carthene commanders sat in a circular chamber, their scales gleaming in the harsh light, watching recordings of the battle at Kepler Station over and over. This is impossible, Counselor Vreshka hissed. 15 warships, including Jareth's flagship, defeated by a single alien vessel. Not defeated. Another counselor corrected. Surrendered. Jareth's second-in-command ordered the fleet to stand down rather than continue fighting. He cited unacceptable casualties and the destruction of the command ship. Then he should be executed for cowardice. He has been, the counselor replied. But it changes nothing. The humans exist. Their technology is superior to ours in several key areas, and they have given the coalition hope. The recordings played again, showing the Indomitable weaving through the Carthene formation, using their own tactics against them, turning numerical superiority into a clustered mess of friendly fire and confusion. We should assemble the Grand Fleet, Vreshka declared. Send every available warship to crush this human threat before it grows. And if we do that, who protects our conquered territories? Another counselor asked. We maintain control through force. If we withdraw our fleets to fight the humans, the subject worlds will rebel. They wouldn't dare. They would, the counselor insisted. They already are. We're receiving reports of uprisings on 6 worlds. Governors are being overthrown. Carthene garrisons are under siege. The humans have shown that we can be beaten, and that knowledge is more dangerous than any weapon. The debate raged for hours. But no consensus emerged. The Carthene Dominion, which had seemed so unified and unstoppable, was fracturing. Some advocated for total war against humanity. Others argued for consolidation and defense. Still, others whispered about negotiating peace, though such talk was considered treasonous, while the Carthene argued. The coalition forces grew stronger, aboard the Indomitable. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen worked miracles. The battleship had taken devastating damage at Kepler Station. Hull breaches covered 3 decks. The reactor had come within minutes of catastrophic failure, and half the port weapon systems were offline. But Chen and his crew had kept the ship alive, and now they were slowly bringing it back to full strength. How bad is it really? Vasquez asked, standing in the main engineering bay. Chen wiped grease from his hands and sighed. Well, the good news is we're not going to explode. The reactor is stable. Containment is holding. We can maintain basic operations, and the bad news is we took hits that would have destroyed most ships. The hull integrity is compromised in multiple sections. We're operating at maybe 70% combat effectiveness. Another fight like Kepler, and we won't walk away. Vasquez nodded. How long until we're back to full strength with coalition assistance? Maybe 6 weeks? They don't have the same technology. But they've got good engineers, and they're eager to help. Make it for weeks, Vasquez said. We've hurt the Carthene badly, but they're not finished. They'll regroup and come back harder. Captain. Even for weeks might not be enough if they send a real fleet, and we'll have to make sure we're not fighting alone, Vasquez replied. She returned to her quarters and sat down at her communication terminal. It was time to send a message to Earth. The report she compiled was detailed and honest. She described the victories at Perth Station and the other minor engagements. the successful training of coalition forces, and the tactics that had proven effective. She also described Kepler Station, the desperate fight against overwhelming odds, and the casualties the Indomitable had suffered. "The Carthene Dominion is everything we feared," she recorded. "Their technology is formidable, their force is vast. We've proven that human ships can defeat them in combat, but not indefinitely. One battleship cannot win a war against an empire of 40 star systems." She paused, choosing her next words carefully, however. "The coalition races are capable and willing allies. They learn quickly and fight with courage when given proper leadership and tactics with human support. They could reclaim their worlds and push back Carthene expansion. My recommendation is as follows. Send a diplomatic mission to formalize an alliance with the coalition. Send additional military assets to support ongoing operations, and most importantly, send engineers and technical advisors to help upgrade coalition ships with compatible human technology. The Carthene are vulnerable right now. Their empire is fracturing, systems are rebelling, and their confidence is shattered if we act quickly. We can end this threat permanently if we delay. They will recover and will face a longer, bloodier war." She ended the recording and sent it via encrypted burst transmission toward human space. The message would take weeks to arrive, and the response even longer. But Vasquez had done what she could. Meanwhile, the coalition was experiencing something it hadn't felt in years: momentum. Governor Thelanara, who had sent that desperate distress call from dying Valora Prime, now coordinated coalition forces from a command center on Perth Station. The liberation of her homeworld was impossible. The Carthene had made sure of that when they burned it. But she could ensure that no other world suffered the same fate. She stood before a holographic display showing the current state of Carthene-controlled space. Red markers indicated Carthene strongholds, yellow markers showed contested systems, and green markers, precious few of them, indicated liberated worlds. "We're receiving reports from the Kishar Union," her aide reported. 3 of their industrial worlds have successfully driven out Carthene occupation forces. They're requesting technical assistance to rebuild their defense networks. "Send what we can spare," Thelanara ordered. "What about the Drenth Combine, still fighting?" "The Carthene have reinforced their positions there, but Drenth forces are holding with support from our fighter wings." Thelanara nodded. "It was slow progress, but it was progress 2 months ago." The coalition had been a scattered group of refugees with no hope. Now they were an organized resistance with victories under their belt. All because one human ship had answered a desperate call. The turning point came when a Carthene-controlled world called Nyxera Prime staged an uprising. Nyxera had been conquered 5 years ago and turned into a manufacturing center for Carthene weapons and ships. The native population, a species of cybernetic beings called the Nexari, had been forced to work in factories that produced the very weapons used to oppress them. When word of Kepler Station reached Nyxera, something broke. The Nexari workers coordinated in secret, using their natural ability to interface with machines on a predetermined signal. They simultaneously sabotaged every Carthene facility on the planet. Factories exploded, ships on the construction slips collapsed, weapon stockpiles detonated. The Carthene garrison, already demoralized by news of defeats in other systems, was overwhelmed within a day. Nyxera Prime was free, and the Nexari immediately pledged support to the coalition. "This changes everything," Tanaka said, studying the reports from Nyxera. "They have industrial capacity that rivals anything the Carthene lost. If we can protect them while they retool for coalition production, we'll have ships." Vasquez finished. "Real ships, in quantity. No more fighting with whatever we can salvage, but protecting Nyxera Prime meant drawing a line. The Carthene couldn't allow such a valuable world to remain in rebellion. Intelligence indicated they were assembling a fleet, smaller than the one at Kepler, but still formidable, to retake the planet. Vasquez called a council meeting with all coalition leaders. "The Carthene are coming for Nyxera," she told them, "if they retake it. They'll execute every Nexari involved in the uprising and restore their industrial capacity. We can't let that happen." "How many ships are they sending?" the Kishari admiral asked. "Current estimates suggest 8 cruisers and supporting vessels. And we have the Indomitable at 70% effectiveness." 6 coalition frigates, 12 fighter squadrons, and 3 destroyers that the Nexari managed to capture during the uprising. The numbers didn't look good. "We're outnumbered again," someone pointed out. "We're always outnumbered," Vasquez replied. "But we're getting better at fighting smart, and this time we choose the battlefield. We know they're coming. We know where they'll arrive. And we have time to prepare. You want to set a trap?" "I want to teach the Carthene the same lesson they've been teaching everyone else," Vasquez said. "That some fights aren't worth the cost." The defense of Nixera Prime took 2 weeks to organize. The Indomitable positioned itself in high orbit, its weapons covering the most likely approach vectors. Coalition fighters hid among the planet's 3 moons. Waiting in silence, frigates took positions near the asteroid belt, ready to flank, and on Nexera itself. The population prepared. They couldn't fight in space, but they could ensure that even if the Carthene landed, they would pay for every meter when the Carthene fleet arrived. They found not an easy target, but a prepared defense. The battle was fierce.